the 1988 Notre Dame class. This is John Walters. John, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
It's our pleasure. So you're out in Utah right now, I understand?
Yeah, a little high school buddy reunion. So we're just out in Park City and just a little mountain biking and fresh air kind of stuff.
For those who aren't aware, John is a Notre Dame blogger. He loves talking Notre Dame sports. I know I look forward to his add-ons on Twitter when he talks to everyone. So I know we have a few new questions for you in regards to football camp and the season starting up, ready to get into a conversation with you. So I hope you're really ready for this. I know we're jumping at the bit to ask you a few things.
Happy to do it. Happy to talk about it.
All right. Well, obviously the big discussion in camp right now is the quarterback discussion. Reading camps, there's so many reports out right now. The most recent is that we're hearing that Everett Golson's getting a majority of the snaps with the first team, but you're seeing Andrew Hendricks get in the rotation. What do you take from that? Do you think that is a leading sign to September 1st in Dublin? It will be Everett Golson under center?
Oh, I think it's too early to know. I really do. I mean, right now I'd say yes, you lean toward that. But if you know Coach Kelly, he doesn't fall in love with quarterbacks the way most coaches do. I will have no qualms with using both of them against Navy or against anybody. Really, it's not a Tom Brady sort of situation for him, and it never has been. You can look at games last season from South Florida to USC. He puts in the quarterback that he thinks will do fine for him, and he doesn't get too attached to any one. I mean, when you go back to Cincinnati and Tony Pike went down, and they were very good when Tony Pike went down, and Zach Collaros stepped right in and basically and he kept the job after that. So I think people love to talk about who will be the starting quarterback for Brian Kelly. I don't think it's going to be one guy all season long. I really don't.
This is John Walters with us on Down the Line, the New Indy Nation Network. John, you bring up a good point there. I don't think that's something really a lot of people think of. Even Dane Chris was one of those guys that had a little bit of rotation in and out. Last year in the Purdue game, granted we're up 28 points, but he gets in. The USC game, he comes in and Tommy Rees takes a hit, drives him down. We all know, unfortunately, how that ends on the goal line. The solid point is there is, where do you see more or less how they split these guys in? Do you see maybe as Andrew Hendricks being that big body, hate to say it for all the people that hate to hear the name, Tim Tebow kind of guy for Notre Dame?
Oh, he's obviously in a different class. I mean, Tim Tebow is such a physical runner, and Andrew Hendricks not there. But I think what Kelly's advantage on all of this is he's got a quarterback knowing that if he's cold, he's coming out. And it's going to put a little pressure. No one's going to get too comfortable there. And there's another side of that coin. You want to be, as a quarterback, you want to be comfortable. You want to be the leader. It's the old aphorism, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any. And there's some truth to that. But he's got two relatively untested guys. And I think for anyone to say he's going with Everett Golson and he's the quarterback for the season, it's not going to be that. It's going to be he's going with Everett Golson or Andrew Hendricks, and he's our quarterback as long as the offense is running efficiently. And if it's not, as you saw, like we saw in other games, I mean, even the Stanford game, we saw Andrew Hendricks come in for Tommy Rees. So again, there are different styles of quarterbacks. They're both, because they're so inexperienced, especially Golson, they're going to make mistakes. And I think the more curious thing is how long will Brian Kelly stay with a guy who is going to make a mistake or two. Tommy Rees certainly made his share last year before he replaces him.
Yeah, that's a solid point there. We've talked a little bit here. We actually had a discussion last week on the quarterbacks. And obviously Gunnar Kiel and everyone, Notre Dame's fan mind is he's going to redshirt. And it makes sense, obviously. He's the new guy. He's the guy that everyone says is the quarterback of the future. But we also had a discussion of if they stumble out of the gate, if they go 2-3 or they go 2-4, could you see a case where Gunnar Kiel's playing this season?
Nothing would surprise. You know what? After the first half of last season against South Florida, I don't think anything Coach Kelly could do would surprise me in terms of the quarterbacks. I still have a hard time getting over what happened to Dane Christ and the Tommy Rees situation, but. It's not impossible. I'd be very surprised. I think if Gunnar Kiel was blowing away people in reps during in the next 2 weeks, I think there'd be a chance. The thing about Gunnar Kiel is he's not the kind of guy that you're going to be, worrying about who's the quarterback. And when Gunnar Kiel steps into the job, it's his job, and that's going to happen. So it's an interesting thing. I mean, I think Kelly is very much hoping to buy a year and get him next year, but don't, like you said, I mean, they've got 2 games to start the season that they should win. Then they've got 6 games that are pretty difficult, and who knows what will happen over those 6 games.
And my last question before I pass you on to Jason is actually, that's a lot of discussion is, he is bringing in quarterbacks all the time, Coach Kelly, that is. And, even with this year getting Gunnar Kiel, there's now the name Malik Zaire also coming in for next season.
Right.
You've made a point that you say you could see a situation where this year we see Everett and Andrew both playing. Could you see it? Do you think that maybe he might be building towards a 2-quarterback scheme for the future?
No, I don't think so. When you're a coach and there's a guy who's getting you touchdowns on drives, you don't need to get a second guy in. If Gunnar Kiel is passing, Andrew Luck he could run if he wanted to, but there's no reason to put a second quarterback in when you've got Andrew Luck. And again, that's an extreme example. Coaches are always going to recruit quarterbacks, and I think with that position, it's a unique position. If there's a guy who they recruit and he doesn't start after 2 years, it's like you're a free agent more than any other position, unless you want to play a new position. Back in ancient times when I was in Notre Dame, Ken Graham lost the starting job to Tony Rice. Ken Graham wound up playing many years in the NFL. But when he lost the job to Tony Rice, he said, I'm out of here, and he went and played at Ohio State. It's the one position where you really don't begrudge a guy for leaving if he's not the starter. And I think everyone goes in there with eyes wide open. You have a chance to win the job, and if you don't win the job, this guy has it. And if you think you can play somewhere else you want to, best of luck to you. It's not the same as if you're like an offensive tackle. It's a showcase job, and we see it happen every season. Even the old Notre Dame coach, Charlie Weiss, I mean, there's a quarterback there who lost his job, and now they're bringing in Dane Christ, who again, lost his job, and Dane Christ back up as Jake Heaps, who lost his job at BYU. So we see that happen all the time.
Well, John, I know you can't go too long without answering some quarterback questions, so appreciate you taking a few of mine for me. Go ahead and pass it on to my co-host, Jason.
Hey, John, one last quarterback question.
Oh, my gosh.
Just one.
Let's do it.
This is the hardest hitting one so far. Based on Tommy Rees's play last year as far as turnovers and some other issues, and then in the off season with the arrest and everything else, Brian Kelly made a comment about a week and a half ago that when he announced that Tommy and Carla would not be going to Ireland, he also made the comment that both of those guys have the opportunity to work their way back up the depth chart. In your opinion, do you think that this is the end for Tommy Rees, unless, of course, something terrible happens where both of our, Golson and Hendricks go down for whatever reason? But how do you think Tommy Rees stands right now as far as ever seeing the field again?
I wouldn't never bury Tommy Rees because he's just he's shown too much resilience, and there's something about him. He's that dog that nobody wants and keeps showing up at the door, and you wind up feeding him, and he's the one who stays around the longest. I don't know. I mean, the honest answer is I don't know, but I do think that he has Coach Kelly's confidence. And the other guys dazzle you more. Obviously, Eric Golson has the playmaking ability to create something out of nothing. Andrew Hendricks has a little bit of that too, but I think still at this stage of their careers, I think Tommy Rees is the guy he's the closest thing to a coach on the field that Brian Kelly has. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see him starting again. I'm not saying it's going to happen imminently, but this is you send a good kid up to Michigan State in the third week of the season against what may be the best defense in the country, and you may want to have some experience behind quarterback for that game, because that's not going to be an easy game. That's going to be a very difficult game, especially for a quarterback. So, again, we'll see where we're at, but I don't think I would not say we've seen the end of Tommy Rees starting at quarterback.
On the defensive side of the ball, as far as the secondary goes and the safeties and corners, what do you think needs to happen to shore that up for this season? I mean, last year I think we saw, some poor play, but we also saw some technique that just wasn't there. Guys, playing the man, not playing the ball, things like that. What do you think you're going to see from the secondary this year, especially with Elijah Shoemate moving to cornerback and Jamoris and those guys out there? What's your opinion on what needs to improve, and are we going to see an improvement out there?
I think you just have some inexperience out there. There's no way to just replace Harrison Smith and Rick and Blanton, Robert Blanton, and have the same guys there. Those guys were starters for 3 years. There's not enough depth. I mean, that's, to me, I'm not so worried about the starting four in the defensive secondary. What I would be worried about is what happens if one of those guys gets hurt. That's when I think trouble really brews, because then you're bringing in someone who's just completely, green and not, they're not facing passing quarterbacks that they had to face last year, at least not early in the season, and I think that is an advantage that they have. There's no Andrew Luck coming by. They're not going to get Matt Barkley until the very last game of the season. They'll get Landry Jones, but that's not until the end of October. I just think they don't have enough depth. Obviously, and we'll see. We'll just have to see. They're going to have to grow up pretty quickly, and that front seven is going to have to obviously put more pressure on a quarterback, and that's, I think, the way the quarterback can't beat you if he can't throw. So I think the pressure is going to be very important.
Well, yeah, it's like Jerome Sapp said last week. He said that the young guys are, I think he called them blind dogs in a meat house as far as that goes with the inexperience. So you're right that they're going to have to grow up pretty quick and learn some stuff. Right before you came on, we were talking about ranking Manti Te'o among Notre Dame's defenders over the history. Where would you rate him with all the players you've seen as far as linebackers? Where would he stand as far as at this point in his career? I know he's still got this season to do some more great things, but as of this point, where would you put him as far as some sort of ranking of all time?
Wow, I heard the end of that when I came in, and I am so I'm dream teamed out in terms of cross-era rankings because it's really, really dangerous. And but I would say in my time, it's hard to. What's the word I'm looking for? It's hard to do anything to put Bob Crable out of the number one position. And I think Bob Crable still has more tackles. I'm not sure. I don't have that right in front of me.
Yeah, he does. He does.
But the thing that you have to appreciate is Bob Crable played in an era when they ran between the tackle a lot more than they do today. And a middle linebacker was a much more important part of the defense. Now we talk about defensive ends all the time, and it's almost a credit to Manti that he hasn't as many tackles as he does in an era when people don't run the ball as much. I think, but it's hard for me to have anybody unseat Bob Crable, and I think from the '88 championship team, Michael Stonebreaker was tremendous. He was a tremendous linebacker. That said, if you want to put Manti up there on the first team all time, I'm all fine with that. And I think, to me, Manti's legacy more so is I don't know anybody who gave Notre Dame more that they did not deserve to get. I mean, when you look at it, Manti Te'o's his recruiting trip was abominable. I mean, he went and watched the Syracuse loss in a snowstorm. A kid from Hawaii. I saw him, and I said, there's no way he's coming here. And then Pete Carroll wanted him, and Pete Carroll was at the top of his power at USC, and he chose Notre Dame. And then he didn't go on a mission. And then he got, I think, a little verbally abused by Brian Kelly with the slap to the guys who were my guys last year, and he still came out. And after all of that, he stayed for his senior year, which he didn't have to do. So, again, I just think, to me, the legacy of Manti Te'o is this is a guy who's given Notre Dame everything, and not in an era when they really deserved a guy like him to be doing what he's done for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Bob Crable's my number one with with Michael Stonebreaker at 3. And the interesting thing, Bob Crable, 521 career stops, 3 consecutive 100-plus tackles in a season in a row. And Vantai's done that twice now, and that's the only guy who sends him to do it twice. And I think he'll do it again this season. But, definitely, Bob's up there. He's the top guy, in my opinion. I'm going to go ahead and pass you on to Steve. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Keep going.
I remind the listeners we're on the air with Notre Dame graduates. John Walters. Now, we question 1988 graduate. Let's steer off the 2012 team. Take us back a little bit. I've gotten the recruiting stories for Tim Brown and Nicholas Sparks. Now, how did you end up at Notre Dame?
Well, they were actually athletes.
They were.
Nicholas Sparks, I don't know if your listeners know, he was a tremendous high school miler. As you know, probably mentioned everybody, he was on the track team and everything. I was a good student who played high school football, and I got accepted to Georgetown and Notre Dame, and my father mentioned to me at the time that I jumped higher when I read my Notre Dame letter that I was accepted. So that's basically how that happened. But I roomed with a swimmer, a 4-year swimmer, and so we, as people will tell you when you get to Notre Dame, it's just a bunch of sports adult, a lot of repressed sports adult jocks who had 1 or 2 varsity letters in high school, and all of a sudden, we're all kind of rooty. We all want to play, and we're not. Some of us aren't quite at the level to compete there. But Nicholas Sparks, I mean, he was a really tremendous runner. It's pretty funny when I tell that to people who swoon over his books, that they find out what a great athlete he was.
Yeah, it's very true, and listeners of this know when we had Nicholas on, I actually had an SID at Notre Dame, went out and took a picture. He still holds a Notre Dame record in the 4x800 relay, I believe. I'm trying to remember right now. But, a fantastic athlete, and he turned down scholarships to some great schools. Now, there's the follow-up question with Nicholas Sparks. I'm assuming you had English and journalism classes with this young man. Did you ever believe that he would be knocking the ladies' socks off like he would down the road?
Well, I think Nicholas had a reputation for knocking the ladies' socks off even back then at Notre Dame, but it's actually pretty funny. And to my credit, I'll give you, I did row crew at Notre Dame, so I did actually get a varsity letter out of the whole deal. But the thing with Nicholas is there weren't really journalism classes at Notre Dame in the first place back then, and I didn't really know him. I was a pre-med, so I had a few English classes, but I was a pre-med the whole time. And I had friends who knew Nicholas because he was on the track team, and that was about it. But I've spoken to Nicholas since, and you've probably gone over this with your listeners. But Nicholas's story about how he got his first book published is one of those stories that everybody should hear if they ever think they can't get something done, because he just he had no background in writing. He just liked writing. And he was actually a pharmaceutical sales rep, and he just came across a story. And if I'm telling a story you guys already know, I'll be happy to stop. But his in-law.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the Notebook was basically his wife's grandparents' story that he embellished a little bit. But he just kept sending that manuscript out, and somebody took a chance on him.
Yeah, you're absolutely right in that story is. It's amazing, and he also did pharmaceutical sales rep. He did a couple other odd jobs. I think he was a butcher or something, and that book ended up getting plucked off the crap pile from some editor in the middle of nowhere and ended up becoming huge. So amazing story. We'll gear back a little bit towards the football. Your Twitter account is an amazing follow. If you're on Twitter, you're not following John, please do. He talks about everything. It's not just Notre Dame or sports and a lot of fun stuff, but most recently, you are talking to a panel of 3 people who are in favor of the advantages that are perceived of adding field turf to Notre Dame Stadium. And you were one of the people who went out and said, I don't like that. I think that it goes away from I don't know if it's tradition, but you're saying anti-establishment and try and go not try and set the trend or follow a trend. So maybe elaborate on that a little bit. Your feelings on Notre Dame Stadium getting the field turf.
Well, I mean, at the expense of sounding like a troglodyte, I don't want to just say everything new is bad, because if it were, then I wouldn't be on Twitter. I mean, I obviously like some new things, but there's a part of me that just loves the all the right moves aspect of football. That game where it's muddy, and I grew up in New Jersey for part of my childhood, and you want to go outside when it's muddy and rainy and cold and get dirty, and you just don't get dirty on field turf. I think it's a tremendous recruiting advantage because you're telling kids we're going to be fast, and you get the fast kids to come, and that's great. But I just, as you know, from the aesthetic value as a fan, I sort of like natural grass. And people say, well, the clumps come up in November. Well, they come up for both teams, you know. it's kind of November, and I grew up in an era in the 70s when everybody's going to artificial turf in baseball and saying how much better it was. You don't see that much artificial turf in baseball now. I think people came to realize there's something, the aesthetic value and just the traditional value of grass in baseball is something that fans want to see. I know Coach Kelly doesn't want to see it because he wants to, practice in the stadium, but again, that's not that big a deal. If you think you don't have a home field advantage because you're not practicing in the stadium, I've got news for you. You don't have a home field advantage because your team's not better. If your team's good enough, that's just, to me, a bogus argument. And as somebody jokingly said, I think it was Andy Staples asked me, are they going to let the turf grow 4 or 5 inches when USC comes? So, I think part of what sells Notre Dame is its tradition, from the uniforms, and this is part of the tradition. That said, it's not the biggest issue in the world for me, but if you ask me which I prefer, I would take the natural grass.
All right, well, great take. I think we could talk about that kind of things all day, but you kind of led into the other thing about Kelly and kind of the performance. He heads into that legendary third year as a Notre Dame head coach where a lot of statistics say that's the year. If you do not turn it around in year 3, you're never going to turn around Notre Dame. How do you feel he's going? He's split in the media. He's split by the fans. They don't know what to expect going into year 3 or even 4 or 5. So where do you think he stands with the program now, and what are you expecting out of him this year?
Well, as you and your listeners know, the third-year national championship list is a pretty impressive one with Rockne and Leahy and Parsegian and Devine and Holtz. So it's a nice little, tradition that was created. Most of it just coincidence. And this is not a national championship team. It's not a schedule that is going to get you a national championship. I don't believe. But he's on the right track. They're recruiting well. They're looking better. They're organized. They're smart. There's just. I'm sure he has lost way more sleep than anybody in this offseason thinking about the games they lost last year that they should have won. They should have won Michigan. They should have won South Florida. They just threw away games last year. You can even say they threw away the Florida State bowl game. And, to me, what I will be impressed by this year is that they don't throw away games they should win. And just, I think this is a team that's got some really big question marks in depth. And we talked about the defensive secondary. We talked about the inexperienced quarterbacks. And so you just look at, this is a team that they're going to travel to Oklahoma, they're going to travel to USC, they're going to travel to Michigan State. That's just not an easy schedule. And so I don't know if they're going to, I don't think they're going to be the 1988 team that goes undefeated, but I think they're going to be better than last year. And I think I believe in Coach Kelly's, sense of organization and getting things done.
Okay, absolutely. Our fans, cautious optimism and praise for Brian Kelly heading into his last season. Now, everyone, if you follow JDubs88 on Twitter, you do know he also likes to tweet about Saturday Night Live, which is one of my favorite things of all time. And I think the first time I ever tweeted at you, I just started following you last fall, and you started live tweeting SNL, and I said, that's the biggest problem with Twitter is people live tweeting the show. So I do have an SNL question for you. I always kind of analyze the show a bit like a sports team. Mm-hmm. Here's the question. 5 years from now, who is a bigger household name, Jay Farrow or Taron Killiam?
Wow. Good question. And I'm going to go with the latter. I think he's got a certain charm. Jay Farrow is an excellent impersonator. He does, Denzel fantastic. There's something about Taron Killiam which I just think he makes me laugh. I think he's a little more versatile, and that's a great question because they're kind of the rookies, they're the sophomores sort of on the team. I think Taron Killiam won me over with the Quirky Girl sketch where he plays Michael Cera.
Yes.
I think that's a small role that he is just. That's why I like that sketch. It's just for his little moment, and And you know who his wife is?
I don't.
It's Kobe Smulders from why am I forgetting the show?
How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, How I Met Your Mother. That's his wife.
Oh, I think I had heard that before, but yes, that is
That's like
my great trivia.
How I Met Your Mother is my favorite show.
Suit Up. Yes, that's my favorite network show, I have to say, sitcom. So they're both good. I think I'm gonna miss some of the people who left, and I think Bill Hader's coming back. Do we know that?
No, that's what I was going to follow up with, say that they haven't announced the final casting, and that's what I think, that it's kind of like Jay Farrow and Fred Armisen or or Tommy Rees and Everett Golson. I think that if Jay Farrow is given the Barack Obama role for 2012's election season, it all goes out the door. I don't know if it's even a competition anymore. So they have not announced it. It's only that Sandberg and I'm sorry, I forget the other one. Someone else isn't coming back, but Hader's
Kristen Wiig. Kristen Wiig is not coming back.
Kristen Wiig is not coming back, so that's correct.
Right.
John, you've been amazing. We kept you already about 10 minutes longer than I had promised you, so thank you so much, and I want to wish you the best on your vacation. And if there's any way you want to shout out to any of the fans or anything you want to say to the Notre Dame fans out there before you go, please go ahead.
Oh wow! Well, just just keep calm, I guess. I remember being so excited last year. If you don't mind me telling you really quickly, I was in a hotel bar waiting. I was going to cover Boise State, Georgia, and they wouldn't turn on the Notre Dame South Florida game for me. And as a Notre Dame fan, especially the first game of the year, you've been waiting so long. And when I finally got to my hotel room, I just saw the replay of the Jonas Gray fumble return 99 yards. And, my phone lit up from classmates going, it's going to be another one of those years. So I just say keep calm. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting year. And I'm very much looking forward to see what George Atkinson 3 will do and have be a kind of a breakout guy for this team.
Amazing interview, John. Thank you so much. This has been a real honor to have an alum so distinguished in the writing community to have on our show. It's it's just been amazing, and you're obviously so tuned into the team. We didn't even have to worry about asking these questions. You know exactly what's going on. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your trip. Get some more biking in, and we look forward to your Twitters, all your tweets, and we'll hope to have you back on soon.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I enjoyed it very much, and keep up the great work.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, you got it.